I am buying more XRP every single day. And this is not something unique here. If you've been watching the videos for a while, you probably already knew that by now. But the thing is, I don't think many understand the real reason as to why I chose XRP or why I'm doing it so consistently daily. And I thought today I should shed some light on that. So the simple truth is, if you've been investing in crypto for a long time, you'll realize one crucial thing. And that is that nobody really knows which coin is going to pop off in the near future, but that throughout all the previous cycles, it's basically been so that many of the top coins have consistently performed really well. And that the main altcoin season often is signified by altcoins on average performing better than Bitcoin over the past 90 days. And I think we can also all agree that the usual flow is that Bitcoin gains a lot first, then some big coins like XRP, Ethereum, perhaps a BNB, a Solana, all of a sudden do really, really well before it moves over into smaller and smaller coins. Now, for this video, for the sake of explanation, I could have definitely also talked about maybe just ETH or maybe just BNB or Sol, as theoretically speaking, they all have a similar sort of appeal for this part of the run. Because I can make an argument here as to why XRP is severely better than any of these coins. And I can definitely make a good few talking about Ripple's capabilities, talking about Ripple's connections, Ripple's plan, and how XRP could play a significant role in the future for a lot. All right, there's a lot to dive in there. But the reason I don't generally do that is because I don't even think it's a necessary discussion for the shorter term. And what I mean with that is we can really discuss how XRP can see itself positioned in such a way where it's basically 50x from where it is today, right? That is talking about how big the currency is in how we all know it, market cap, perhaps also price. I'm just talking about utility-wise, it could be 50, 100, even 500 times greater than it is right now. So much could run on the XP ledger, you probably can't even comprehend it just quite yet, how big it could be. But if we're talking about where is it going to be in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, because that's, I think, all that's left for this altcoin season, most of that stuff does not really matter. That's in the back of my head as a reason for why I do not think the coin is going to zero. And if you've been watching the videos for a while, you realize all I do is analyze. Do I think this coin will go up over a long term? If the answer is no, I thread really carefully. If the answer is yes, now we go to part 2 of my video basically, I try to buy it as often as possible. And the higher up in the ranks, Bitcoin and XRP for the most part, I try to buy every single day. And now that's not because I have such huge just banks of money that I could just keep it up. It's because I consistently, funnily enough, set money aside to get these dips. And you might say, huh, but the price has been going up today. So what dip are you talking about? Well, that's the thing, right? I try to emphasize dips. If, for example, all of a sudden we go from $3 to $2.77, I try to definitely put some more pressure at that level, but still, at no point am I really all in. And that's because I promised myself every single run, there's a few mistakes I've made. And the most crucial one is being out of breath, having nothing left to buy the dip in case something crazy happened. And a good example was, I believe, August 5th or 4th, 2024. I was on vacation with some of my friends in some island in Spain. I don't remember which one we were at the time. And all of a sudden, the market crashed like crazy. And if you guys remember, one of my trades, I think my Solana trade or something like that, got liquidated, which, you know, doesn't necessarily happen to me that often. Happened at the time because I was just too slow. And I think perhaps I was sleeping or went to sleep, and I thought, it will probably be fine. And it wasn't, because the market just crashed that much. And in that time, I realized, if I just, instead of thinking like, I'll just let it ride, see it, because I had the money, by the way. All I had to do was just switch it from account to account, basically from my funding part, I think, to my derivative side. I just had to switch it over. If all I did was just take the time to set myself up, put the money in the right place so I could shelter another good drop and actually add the money that I had left into that drop, because it was one of the craziest drops for the stock market as well, I would have been laughing my freaking ass off right afterwards, the day after. Right now especially. And that keeps resonating with me. If I just keep it up, I don't have to be specific on the dip. I just have to be consistent, because if we look at cryptocurrencies throughout time, they've only gone up for the most part. So as long as that trend does not break, this strategy works flawlessly. Not financial advice, no guarantees are made. It's just my thoughts. And that's basically all I'm doing. All I'm looking at is, hey, should I get out of some of my positions right here? And sometimes, like for example, with our $1 million XRP trade, you get to a top where you would think, you know what, I got to realize some. And even though I only cashed out $42,000 right here, you might think, oh, that's so little. Why didn't you cash out the full $400,000 that you were in profit? It's because overall, I don't really think it's that much. And I was just earlier today looking at some of my videos where I'm actually $81,000 at a minus on this trade. It was only I think $400,000 trade at the time. And I realized at that point as well, I kept on saying, just wait, it'll work out, just wait, it'll work out. Many people laughing in the comments, and even now, a lot of the comments I read are people saying, I told you should have cashed out $400,000 when you had the chance. But I keep reverting back and saying, all I want to do is get this position juiced up. And there are multiple strategies to make this work, right? I've told you before, I could actually try to just get myself only into a dip like this, with significant size, or even little, by the way. You know, I could just try to buy a dip, for example, here where we bought at 270 something, right? Try to catch that wave back to $3. In this case, 3010 or 309, I mean, is somewhere where it went to. Could have been a juicy 11% move, even if we got wrecked a few times. It's really a good question of at which point would you have bought, right? If you, for example, try to buy in at 310, you failed the moment it broke $3. You try to buy in at $3 again. It failed the moment it went to like $2.86. You tried again. In this case, it worked out, or it failed at let's say 75, so you bought back in, right? Maybe it failed 3 times. Let's say you lost, 3 times 1K. In that sense, the moment that the price went up, though, perhaps because you kept increasing your size, or perhaps because you were anticipating that this was really going to be the lowest that it could go based on some other factors, you were significantly juiced up here, or you never got wrecked, but you just kept adding on your position on the way down. That's how I told you before that some of the biggest traders that are public, how they make a ton. It's by executing with bigger size over bigger, or I'm going to say bigger swings, longer periods of time, and by just not giving up. The moment you give up, the moment you think, maybe it's not going to happen, maybe it's not, that's when things get really, really hard. And I keep emphasizing, I keep explaining that there are a lot of people that have got significant sums of money where all they do is what I'm telling you right now. And this game can be played on any level. This can be played with a few $100s, can be played with a few million, a few tens of millions of dollars. The higher up you go, the more difficult it obviously gets because your size might actually affect the market. But for most people, that will not be a problem. And again, the smaller you go, to some extent, it might also get more difficult because if you've only got $100, you can't necessarily buy that much, right? Because I think a minimum order is like $10. And that's a good question of where do you want to start at. But the reason I'm explaining this again and again and again is because I've already told you, just with this, let's say $500,000 I got into my account, I seriously think this will be worth at least $4 or $5 million in a few months from now if I just play the cards as I've explained them right here on the channel. And a lot of people can't fathom that. By the way, I'm logged out. I have to log back in. But I've shown you with the bots as well. You saw in just a very short amount of time how many of them doubled or tripled. The XLM bot, for example, actually quadrupled in just like 2 or 3 months of me staying consistent, buying that dip. And if you look at the results, really, right, like I've said before, even if one fails, mostly they fail on the short term. And if you look back later, they'll do beautifully. And if we look at some of the results right here, you can now perhaps, following these short amount of times, start to grasp how I can probably turn this, let's say 100K account into also, okay, by now it's almost like $500,000 maybe, but let's just say $100,000 account that I put a couple $100,000 in, but anyway, into a few $1,000,000 just by staying consistent with my purchase. And that's again the thing that I've explained with the bots, right? I always have links down below to those. The main reason is if we're talking about XRP, the reason I've got that 10K to $1 million challenge, the reason I've consistently got more bots specifically running for XRP and why I always have bigger XRP trades. I only show you like 5 today, right? The ones that I showcased. I have a lot open, right? The main reason I have it is because I just seriously think that it's the most undervalued coin out of the whole bunch. Again, the long term is set. I've explained a few reasons at the start. I want to buy consistently because it is one of the biggest cryptocurrencies and they tend to do best in this season. I don't want to stick around with the smallest because yes, the gain potential is more, but the probability of an 80% drop is also more. That's why XRP was even juicier in the run up towards the 366. And again, it can start to get juicier even, but preferably, funnily enough, we'd like to see the price do a bit better. And you might say, well, how is that? Well, preferably, we actually break this little short-term downtrend that we've been seeing. So we made ourselves that top at 366, and thus far, it's mostly consistently been down. Now, this is not really a big issue. This is not a big issue in the grand scheme of things, but on the short term, it's a better question of where exactly do you then enter, and should you be exiting, for example, at tops, like for example the top we saw right now, or should you be attempting to hold it through to actually see that breakout, in this case here, a breakout above, for example, 305, where it eventually can start trending back upwards. Where do you want to take the position? Do you want to try and buy that dip, for example, in this case here, expecting this to be the start of the new rally? Or do you want to actually sell into that strength, sell into that roof, and then buy back in the moment it broke through or potentially broke through with actual confirmation above some certain levels? Since I'm divided over the two, in this case, both of them would probably work out if we're lucky. But again, the breakout is a little bit more consistent. But if any of these two scenarios is truth, which, I mean, what else can happen, right? I guess the only thing that could happen is sideways, but I think more likely one of the two things I just mentioned. Then still, after all I had to do is just consistently keep buying, because for the worst case, yes, it's going to go down slightly more and more and more. Yes, it could have taken a little bit more advantage of the opportunities, but generally speaking, we know a certain floor will be seen, right? And we still think XRP is not going to go below $2.50 again anywhere, right? I mean, $2.80 was to be expected. I think it went kind of low with 270 something. But even at that point, if we just had a little bit more confidence, we could have entered even crazier. But it pointed out that if we went crazy at $3, we would have already been wrecked at 270, right? That's why we always keep some breathing room, in this case here, to actually add at 270. But the whole point of the matter here, and I still stand by that, is if I still see this coin being at, let's say, $20 this season, $15 this season, to be conservative, I'm going to say $10 this season, then all this is cheap. Everything under the all-time high, theoretically speaking, is a dip. Right now, the price is 20% under the all-time high. It could even be 30% like a day or two ago. If I see it all as a dip, if I see it all as cheap, all I got to do is stay consistent. And if I don't go too crazy at one go, hey, maybe I get lucky. I buy the 277 and it turns out to be the bottom of the bottom. I make a frick ton just off of that. But maybe I got unlucky and it turns out there's one more wick, just like on August 4th or 5th, I get wrecked out, I get stopped out. And at that point, even if I got stopped out or liquidated, if all I could do is just enter again, oh, that could have been amazing then, because maybe you really caught that bottom. And the reason I'm emphasizing this so much is because really, in a bull market, how far down can you go? There have been instances, sure, where the price really fell a lot, but what is the probability? And so if we're basing every single thing here on a mass exodus event, another Trump situation where all of a sudden he's like, oh, we're doing this to every single country, yabba-dabba-doo, could happen, right? Or another COVID situation, it could happen. And if that's something you really are fearful of, then I think mostly buying into strength is one of the things that can be done here. Anyway, on the short term, seeing a nice little inverted head and shoulder pattern working out for XRP. And I keep saying, most of these coins, Bitcoin, ETH, all of them, they really technically just work. What I mean with that is, if you stayed consistent throughout time, you would have done really, really well. And why in bull markets do we forget that? Why all of a sudden when the price comes down, we forget that? And that's what I wanted to bring to y'all's attention again today. Why I'm so consistent, why I keep buying, why I keep staying confident, and why I even now lost hundreds of thousands of dollars waiting on XRP to break a new high. Because I find that sacrifice worth it. Yes, I could have cashed out the $400,000, which right now is halved to only $200,000 profit. And when you say those numbers, when you really start thinking about them, like, ooh, you know, could have just clicked once and I got another house. That's pretty confronting. But then on the opposite side, it's this story. If I put $100 into Bitcoin in 2010, I'd have $2.8 billion now. That's a saying that people often have. Like, oh, if only I was early, I would have had so much money. But the thing is, not really. If you bought $100 in 2010, you would have watched it go from $1,000 to like $100,000 later on. And then 1.7 million, which would have been crazy for you if you started with $100. So then you would have done nothing though, right? So and then you saw your 1.7 mil all the way go back down to 170,000. You still did nothing. Then you saw it go to $110 million all of a sudden the next season. You still did nothing. It went back all the way to 18 million. You still did nothing. Then you saw it go from 18 million to 400 million. You did nothing. Then you saw it go from that 400 million all the way back to 85 million. What a roller coaster. And then you saw 85 million go to 1.6 billion. You still didn't do nothing though. You saw it climb all the way back down or shrink all the way down to 400 million. You still didn't do anything. And then now it'd be worth 2.8 billion. The mental gymnastics you're going to have to guide yourself through. If you remember that guy who had, I think, $40,000 worth of BTC in 2010, that was now worth, what, 8 or 9 billion, I believe it was, right? I don't remember the exact numbers. I think 8 or 9 billion. People say, oh, easy. Oh, hey, man, whatever. It's not really as easy when you start thinking about it from the longer term. But if you again look back, if he in 2010, all he did consistently was just keep on buying and shutting up and not thinking, but what if? what would he be happy right now, right? That goes for every single year thus far because we're at all-time high territories. And I always like to say this. I'll talk about this in another video specifically focusing on this, but there's only really 3 scenarios in which this happens. 1, you're already incredibly rich, so 100 mil doesn't really do that much for you, so you literally forget about the $100 you bought as a joke. Could be. 2, you're incredibly lucky and found your key only after losing it for like 15 years. Or 3, you're incredibly retarded. Like, you actually have a brain deficiency. Like, the chromosomes, they're not properly chromosoming, if you get my drift. You know, you're not properly functioning in the brain. Matter of fact, you are clearly, at that point, stupidly stupid. Like, literally bottom of the bottom feeder. I don't even know how to describe the bottom of the bottom feeder that you are. But a multi-billionaire. How? Yeah, I guess just by being really, really strange. Because that's a choice that a lot of people could not have made, right? To go from $100 to a few $1 billion in all those years, especially with those roller coasters, always thinking, but what if? Yeah, and an argument could be, well, you could cash out some, right? But when? Exactly. When? And so in my process, I keep telling y'all as well, this $400,000 in profit, it's really only 40% on our whole balance. It's good, but in the grand scheme of things, is it really? No, we're looking for something way greater. And that's why I just keep taking these opportunities. I think a lot of people that are in our group, by the way, they're trading significantly faster. And I think that's also how you can expedite the process. What I want to showcase here is not necessarily how to make the most amount of gains. Because like I said, it's better to take advantage of shorter term opportunities by trying to buy that bottom hard, trying to sell this top, trying to buy that bottom again. That's how you make way more on the short term, right? What I'm showcasing here, also with the bots, that's the reason I'm not cashing out and reinvesting most of them, is to showcase how far a little bit of money can get you. Now, obviously, it's still a few $100,000 I'm playing with here, so it's not very little. But in the grand scheme of things, we're also talking about turning that few $100,000 we've got in this one account into many millions of dollars within like 6 months. So still pretty cool if you ask me. Anyway, that was today's story. Just wanted to quickly bring some motivation back in and explain my reasoning because thus far, it's always worked out, and I want you guys to remember that. But hey, not financial advice. I make no guarantees. 0 of them, right? Nothing. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Matter of fact, you're not even sure if you're going to make one more blink or one more freaking word coming out of your mouth. You don't know. It's not guaranteed. You could be attacked by a sheep in your sleep tomorrow. Or even, matter of fact, in like a few minutes. Even though you're standing, all of a sudden you're sleeping and a sheep attacks you. It's not impossible. You can't tell me that. Yeah, that's about it. If you also, by the way, want to trade, if that's something for you, I've got some links down below. This is for the bots. I'll talk about that more a bit later. And Blowfin is just a platform I usually have all my bigger trades on, at least nowadays. Yeah, check them out. Links are down below. Some cool bonuses can be gotten. And that's about it.